let's get started.
Let's do it. It's Monday and we're tired.
Yeah. Yeah, we are very tired. We got behind in recording, as we said last week. We're still behind. And if you are watching the video of this, you can see how dead we are inside, but that's okay.
That makes for better content. So.
Yeah. I have no filter for me right now. So we have episode 18 titled Organ Transplants, the Science of Second Chances. And just a reminder that this is a 2-part episode. All of this is going to be human to human organ transplants. And then we're going to talk about animal to human organ transplants next week.
Yep. So let's jump into it.
Yeah. Welcome, cadaver crew.
Get your dark little minds right and settle in.
Class is in session and the cadaver is already on the table.
I'm B.
And I'm Sam.
And this is the Cadaver's Lessons.
Yeah, so, we're talking about organs. So we're going to talk about almost every part of the body. I know my side's going to focus a lot on immunology. It's really hard to dive deep into the medicine of organ transplant without diving deep into the immunology. And for my side, we are not getting into individual organ transplants. We'll talk about organ transplants as a whole, but there's so many different types. That would be a multi-hour long episode. So just know what's coming on that side. I personally think the immunology of it is super interesting to talk about how to prevent rejection and immunosuppression and all of those things. It's a lot of where mine's coming from.
Yeah, mine is also focused on, obviously, human-to-human transplants and the development of some of the concepts of the immune reactions during transplant and all of the experimentation, and then a little bit of the ethics behind that.
Nice. All right.
Vitals check.
Yeah, vitals check.
Yeah, like we said, we're tired. Life is just lifing right now. So going through a lot of changes and doing a lot of things and just trying to survive a little bit. So that's where we're at.
Yeah, not necessarily like anything bad in particular. We're just kind of burning at both ends right now, I would say. Yeah.
Like most people do usually.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm ready for a break though. I'm like catching bits of sleep during the day because our kid isn't sleeping that great at night, or I'm getting home really late from shifts and then being up early with her in the mornings. And B is also pulling late nights and early mornings, and we'll get there. We'll get through it. This too shall end, as I tell myself on every horrific shift.
It has an ending point for sure. Yeah. It's just a phase of life.
A few ER moments this week. I'm going to talk about 2 in particular, and I'm going to save my other one for next week, just in case. It's just such a good case, and I really want to give it its spotlight. But 2 from this week, I had an agitated man come in. Whenever we have someone come in that's agitated, EMS will typically let us know, like, hey, agitated, we already have them in restraints, or like, maybe I would have restraints ready, those things. And so we knew he was coming in restraints, and he had already gotten 5 at Repair-It-All. On arrival, before we could even move him from EMS stretcher to our bed, I ordered, the nurses gave another 10 of Zyprexa. It did not touch him. We had, I would bet, 10, 12 of us in the room, including like the EMS crew, getting him moved from their stretcher to our bed and back in restraints. He was a stroke alert for me because he had aphasia, he had confusion. I didn't think it was a stroke, but also he has these symptoms and I can't rule out a stroke and it has to be in my differential. So we're trying to get him to the CT scanner and he's like still not sitting still. And so I ordered 1 of Ativan, and mind you, at this point, like you start to get concerned, this is all going to catch up to them at once. They're not going to protect their airway and we're going to have to intubate because of all the medications we gave.
Kind of like shots of tequila.
Yes, precisely. And like neurology's there because we've called the stroke alert. And they're like, we need to get him to the scanner. And I'm like, yes, but have you seen him? He's not sitting still in the scanner. And there's no reasoning with him. Like he is not with us whatsoever. I give another 1 of Ativan sitting outside of the CT scanner because we couldn't get him in. And then 10 minutes later, none of these meds had touched him. And so we took him back to the room and I put him on a Presidex drip, which is insane. And we maxed out the Presidex drip, still didn't touch him. If anything, he got more agitated. So we actually had to intubate this guy for like paralytics and sedation for his agitation. Also, like he was throwing himself in rhabdo at this point because he's fighting against restraints, right? And so just an absolutely wild case. I read the ICU note. They never figured out what it was. Their best assumption is that he was post-ictal from a seizure, but his urine drug screen was not exciting. His blood alcohol was negative. There was nothing in the brain that could have caused anything. When we intubated him, he was maxed out on Precedex, maxed out on propofol, and then we had to add a fentanyl drip because he was still fighting through those meds. So, like, just for those medical friends, just think about how much medicine is in this guy's system. They tried in the ICU weaning him multiple times before they could, and he immediately became agitated. He was still in 4-point restraints in the ICU because of agitation, fighting through these meds while intubated. Just an insane time. Insane.
Yeah, I can't even imagine. Sometimes when, I get surgery and I'm like counting backwards from 10 and I'm like, stay awake.
Yeah.
And then trying to my best to be like, I'm going to get to 1.
Yeah.
And then by 6 hit, you're like, good night.
Good night. Yeah. Yeah.
I can't imagine trying to fight through that many.
Yes. Insane. And then we had somebody else. This wasn't my patient, but I always try to pop in if I'm not really busy to learn on all of these cases. We had an emergent EMS come in secondary to apnea, no respiratory arrest, no cardiac arrest. He just kept stop breathing. And so, yeah. And so he's like unresponsive. His pupils are dilated, but like he's got a heart rate in the like 40s or 50s, like low, but there. His EKG's normal. His fast like is normal. There's no signs of trauma, anything. The ER doc was like, I don't want to intubate this guy if he's just incredibly drunk. And that's kind of what the picture is pointing to. Like he's incredibly drunk. And so he's like trying to wake him up. At this point, he's getting all of his breaths through a bag valve mask. And the ER doc calls for, RSI medications to get ready for intubation because he's not breathing on his own whatsoever. They had tried taking the mask away multiple times to see if he had any respiratory drive, and he had 0. And right before he went to go start, he said, you know what? He just sternal rubbed him with like all of his weight. And the guy woke up, freaked out, did not need to be intubated anymore, and ended up in restraints for agitation.
My gosh.
And his alcohol was just ridiculously high. And he was about to be intubated for alcohol intoxication. Isn't that just insane that people can drink that much?
I was telling Sam earlier in the kitchen, I was like, I drank one of those Surfside things last night, and I'm also sleep deprived, so alcohol hits different.
Yeah.
But it's like 4.5%. I drank 1 over an hour, essentially. And then I had freaking night sweats last night. My body was like, what the hell are you doing? Drinking a little drinky poo before bed. I can't imagine having like a 600
insane
or whatever alcohol level.
Insane. Highest I've seen recently was a 563.
That's pretty high.
But then you see people with like 180 and you're like, what a loser. Why are you so drunk? And then you have to remind yourself that like, no, that is drunk for the general population.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's only the alcoholics that are hitting above 500.
Yes. Yes. And then just podcast moments. We've had a ton of listeners from Japan recently. If you didn't listen to our Huntington's case file episode, I just wanted to add this comment here. If you did listen, you can fast forward a few seconds. But we had a super sweet woman who shared her family story about Huntington's disease on our Buy Me a Coffee and sent a donation in support of us. And it was just very sweet. Obviously, the story is so sad and has impacted their family immensely. But also knowing that she got to listen to our episode and felt like it was something that we did good.
Yeah.
Meant a ton to us. Just putting that out there. One of the bigger comments that we've gotten, especially since blood transfusions and HIV and AIDS and all of those things. So it was good. It was great to read.
Yeah. It's exciting when you can connect with somebody a little bit more.
Yeah. So let's get started with this then. Start with background a little bit so we can really set the scene for what's going on. In the United States alone, there is over 100,000 people waiting for an organ transplant. There's actually a website that stays active for what the transplant list is and is updated every day in the United States. And today it was 102,000, and off the top of my head, like 423 or something like that. And so that transplant list is massive. That's just the US. That's not worldwide. And only about 48,000 organ transplants take place each year. So as you can imagine, the list is going to continue to grow. And we're seeing that the organ donations are not growing with it. So there's always going to be this supply versus demand issue. An organ transplant is defined as replacing a failed organ with a healthy donor organ. There's, of course, one surgery for the donor to remove the organ. And a deceased donor, it is obviously someone that has already passed, but their organs are in healthy condition. And that means different things. So like cornea tissue can still be donated after almost any condition of the patient. Cancer, alcohol, car accident, anything like that. Versus obviously as we get into like liver, lungs, heart, kidneys, if someone has cancer, they become maybe not 100% unlikely in 100% cases, but their ability to donate decreases exponentially.
Yeah. I mean, it would be a shit show if it was like, you get what you get,
Yes.
no matter what. And yeah, that would not be great. You wait for so long and then you get an organ that's not in good shape.
And has cancer?
Yeah.
Yes. Yes.
No.
If it's a living donor, they have to be in good health, have no medical issues to affect the surgery, and they must be a match to the person to receive the organ. And we're going to talk about that a lot down on my side.
Going to continue that concept of like blood transfusion that we talked about, where you have to be a match.
Yeah. Yep.
Or else it turns very bad.
Very bad, very quickly. And then, of course, there's a surgery for the recipient to get the organ. Two major things for you to understand before we dive deep into this episode. One is that organs need blood flow immediately. They start dying in minutes without oxygen. Ischemia is defined as the lack of blood flow, and reperfusion is restoring that blood flow, but it can cause injury to restore blood flow. The other thing is that your immune system is built to reject anything foreign, which is fantastic for infections, but obviously bad for transplants. So we rely on that immune matching to prevent rejection. So I think those are like the big things I wanted to hit before we dive deep into everything else.
Yeah, that was good. That'll be helpful moving forward.
And then short definitions, just to make sure we're all on the same page. A donor is the person that is giving the organ. The recipient is the person that is receiving it. A graft is a transplanted organ. Rejection is your immune system attacking the new organ. Immunosuppression, medications that intentionally weaken your immune system so that your body will accept and not fight off that new organ. Brain death is the irreversible loss of all brain function, even if the heart is still beating with machines. So there is a difference between brain death and cardiac death. Cardiac death is when the heart stops beating. Most organ donations occur after brain death, not cardiac death.
Yeah. I mean, blood supply.
Blood supply. That is the name of the game.
Yep, absolutely. So where did it even start? Where did it come from? And the idea of transferring body parts is not a new concept, appears throughout ancient mythology in civilizations around the world. However, the type of transplants, we don't really see organ unless it's skin until much, much later. So first we're going to start with kind of like the outside of the body. And a few of these topics we've touched before in some of our other episodes. So we'll get through those and then we'll get to the organ stuff. But the transplantation of tissue was first performed over 5,000 years ago. Both Egyptians and Hindus transplanted skin to replace noses destroyed by diseases, throwback to syphilis and leprosy.
Yes.
AKA Hansen's disease. So you guys remember that the noses would kind of fall or disintegrate almost. And they got really, really good at basically creating grafts for noses.
Really?
To put them back on.
That's crazy because it's not like they have the micro instruments to reconnect all the blood vessels and stuff, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
We're going to get into it. There's a little story down here about nose transplantation.
A nose transplant. I mean, now we're doing like full face transplantations.
Yeah.
So.
I mean, it didn't come from another person's nose, but it came from somewhere else.
Oh boy.
We'll get to it. The first written mention of transplantation was in 1559 BCE by Eberus Papyrus, which mentioned skin grafting for the treatment of burns.
Yes.
So, and most of what I'm going to talk about, at least the first half, has to do with burns or disease that has skin defects. And then in 600 BCE, the Indian surgeon Shustra conducted the first plastic surgery operations, including full-thickness skin grafts.
That's so cool that this was so long ago.
Limb transplant was first mentioned in 348 Common Era in Jacobus de Voragines, The Miracle of the Black Leg.
Yeah, that's quite the name.
Yeah, I know.
It's catchy.
It'll catch your attention, that's for sure.
Yeah.
And in this story, Cosmas and Damien, Christian saints of medicine, pharmacy, and surgery, replaced the cancerous leg of a Roman deacon with that of a deceased Ethiopian man. So it was black because skin color.
Yeah, but I guess like I'd rather have a leg that doesn't match in skin color than not have a leg.
Yeah, for sure, especially in those times.
Yeah.
Can't be affording to not have a leg.
Yeah, we can't be a hunter and a gatherer without a leg.
Yeah, definitely not. John Hunter in the 1760s experimented with transplantation. For example, he worked with a dentist and transplanted teeth for distinguished ladies,
Oh.
usually taking them from their maidservants.
Oh, not good. Not good.
Not
Okay,
cool,
we're
man.
not in this anymore.
Not cool.
Wow, that's crazy.
Be like, oh, I really like your teeth. Let
Give
me get
them to me.
those.
I'm gonna steal
Ugh,
them.
that's creepy.
That is so creepy.
Yeah.
And they're not replacing the teeth of the maidservants. So now
No.
now they're just toothless.
Guess you could get a wooden tooth or something.
And what's that going to do when I'm trying to chew on steak?
You can't afford steak. In 1817, French physician Henri Dorchet wrote a letter to the editor of the Gazette des Santé on skin transplantation. The story was from his brother-in-law, an army officer stationed in India. In the letter, an army subordinate was punished by having his nose cut off.
Oh, well, that's not a good punishment, guys.
I know.
Like, we've heard of an eye for an eye, but like a nose?
Cool. Also,
cool.
just like a punishment for insubordination.
Yeah.
Like, you to cut somebody's nose off, that seems drastic. I've been punished a lot of ways in the army, never including cutting someone's nose off.
No, that is absurd.
Lots of push-ups.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, go for a run. Don't eat. We can do some mean stuff without cutting their nose off.
Yeah, it just seems a little much.
Yeah, I agree.
So the man sought out the locals who were well versed in skin grafting and their ability to reconstruct noses, because the Indian surgeon who we talked about before, really India was like the place to go to get your nose reconstructed, apparently.
It's like the Miami BBL.
Yeah, before Miami was a thing.
Yeah.
That's where it was at.
Yeah.
And here's a account of the procedure. Because the defect was already showing cicatrization, basically it was on the very end of its healing journey, and so they had to freshen the wound edges. They had to cut it back a little bit. And then one of the man's buttocks, which was to be the donor site, was beaten with an old shoe.
Get the blood flow pumping to the area. Is that why?
Yeah.
Stop.
Until a substantial swelling was achieved.
Then they cut it off.
From this swollen area, a triangular piece of skin with subcutaneous fat was then cut and placed on the defect. It was fixed into position with adhesive plaster.
Stop.
The graft healed, and the man continued to serve in the brother-in-law's command.
No way. No
Why'd
way.
you stay?
Why'd you say? Also, you have a butt for a nose now, dude.
The amount, like the humiliation, the amount of jokes you would have received by staying that, like, come on, man. What are you doing to yourself?
Absurd. Oh, so I feel like this is where the inspiration for Voldemort's nose came from.
A booty nose?
Yeah, with little slits that they put in there.
Yeah, like makeshift. Because, I mean, it was just fat, essentially.
Yeah.
On his face. And then, you gotta, like, make it kind of look like a nose.
Well, they cut it out like a triangle, so they check.
A triangle. Yeah, I mean, I guess when I'm building a snowman and I can cut a carrot out to a triangle, but... Like,
yeah. I mean, it's freaking, when was this?
1817?
Yeah, they're not getting much past that, okay?
It was
they literally beat the ass with a shoe before they did this. Let's set the tone.
Yeah, I know. Brutal, man. And then he's got a triangle out of his butt.
Yeah, and how they closing that up?
I don't know.
That would be an awful suture to do a triangle.
A triangle?
Nah.
Just a deep...
No.
We gotta move on. We gotta move on. Can't think about it too hard. The first documented skin transplant was in 1869 when Jacques Louis Reverdin was successful with epidermic grafting. He used small samples of epidermis pinched or shaved off the superficial layers of the skin.
I mean, I guess I just don't care if the epidermis will heal. It's the very superficial layer of the skin. So, like, why are we transplanting that?
I don't know. Epidermic, you gotta start somewhere.
Okay. Like pinched or shaved off. Like, think about how little of an amount that is.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. That's fine. You go, Jacques.
Skin grafts continued to be used in burn treatment until World War I. For a short time after, ointment treatments and tannic acid replaced grafts, but that did not last very long. By World War II, grafting again became the common practice because tannic acid caused liver necrosis.
No bueno. I do want to do an episode on burns specifically and the way through treatment, because now we do like fish skin. It's so good medicinally.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a really interesting one. So here is a skin graft story for you from World War II.
Story for you.
So pilot Charles Woods on December 23rd, 1844, set out with 28,000 pounds of aviation fuel, and he was about to fly this giant plane full of fuel, and it exploded on takeoff.
Yikes.
He suffered severe burns over 70% of his body, including his face.
Wow.
6 weeks after the accident, the medical team at the Valley Forge General Hospital in Pennsylvania grafted skin onto Woods from a recently deceased soldier.
Wow.
Yeah. Essentially, they were like, this guy does not have a chance
Yeah.
of surviving.
No.
Let's try this.
Yeah, why not?
The graft was successful, and after 24 additional operations over the next 2 years, Woods returned to a relatively normal life and went on to have a family.
I always also like this is so interesting, but then I also think when you have that many burns, fluid resuscitation is huge in survival because obviously they have like no barrier. And so I always wonder when we're not directly learning about this in an episode, like how did they know how to keep this guy alive? Was it just common sense? Like he is seeping out fluid. We're going to continue to give him fluid. You know what I'm saying? Like just did they know this at this point in 1944?
I guess we'll have to do an episode on burns.
Yeah. You get what I'm saying, though? Like,
Yeah.
when did they learn about that?
And he actually lived until 2004 and died at the age of 84.
Wow.
Yeah.
So it lasted a long time.
Yeah. And one of Wood's physicians, Joseph Murray, having seen the success of Wood's case, was fascinated by the concept of transplantation, especially of organs. At the time, though, consensus in the medical world was basically like transplantation of anything other than skin, not feasible.
Yeah.
Due to rejection.
Yeah.
Yeah. However, due to Wood's massive area of skin transplantation and the fact that his body did not reject the grafts, Murray believed that something had tamed his immune system to allow for the success of the transplant. And the idea of organ transplants was not so far-fetched.
Yeah. And I don't know how skin differs. I mean, skin is an organ, but how skin differs from internal organ transplants. But maybe they just got incredibly lucky with blood type matching and HLA matching from the soldier without knowing about it.
Yeah. And so he was trying to figure out what the connection was, like how the immune system didn't respond in so many other ways, especially because it was 70% of his body in deep, severe burns.
Yeah.
Something had to be just right, like you said. And he was trying to figure out what that was.
Yeah.
By the 1950s, skin grafts had been the only successful transplants performed.
So only 76 years ago.
Much of the early organ transplant research focused on the kidneys because live donors could survive with just one of their own.
Yes.
And at the time, donating organs after death, not a thing.
No.
Also, the concept of brain death, not a thing yet.
Yeah.
So really, they're just looking for live donors, and the only real organ that you can transplant is a kidney. So that's where the research focused on. And then in 1953, Richard Herrick, a 22-year-old member of the Coast Guard, was medically discharged due to a diagnosis of chronic nephritis.
Okay. So for those that aren't familiar, nephritis is a kidney condition.
Yep.
Yes.
It's a kidney condition with life-threatening diagnosis at the time and no cure. Before this, there had been a few other renal transplants in humans that had been unsuccessful, though. So they had tried, but they were unsuccessful.
And that would be so hard to like give up one of your kidneys
and then have it not work.
Yes.
The first ever human allograft was done in 1933 by Dr. Turi Voronoi in Ukraine. The patient survived for 2 days, and then the failure of the case was attributed to the ABO incompatibility and the prolonged warm ischemia time of the kidney.
I mean, yeah, you don't have blood type matching. And then as well as you gave them an ischemic kidney that hadn't had good blood flow recently, not really setting them up for success.
Yeah. They were just trying the best they could.
Yeah.
Other surgeries had also been performed in Boston, Chicago, and Paris. And even with all these failures, 22-year-old Herrick was desperate for help. So he went to Joseph Murray, who had been developing his own techniques necessary to perform a renal transplant.
I mean, you're 22 years old and you know that this is likely going to end in death. Like you're young.
Yeah.
Might as well try something.
Yep. And lucky for you, you have a twin brother.
Ooh, nice.
Yeah. So due to the dire condition of the disease and the fact that Herrick had a twin brother, everyone agreed that the experimental procedure should go on.
Yeah.
Murray and his colleagues tested the brothers to ensure their compatibility and similarity using small skin grafts from each brother to another. So they swapped.
Yeah.
Did a little swap. And then they even fingerprinted the two to confirm they were actually identical.
Oh, so an identical twin brother.
Yep.
They're setting up for success.
You're right. The Herrick brothers underwent the surgery without any complications. Richard Herrick went on to live for another 8 years with his brother's kidney, married a nurse who had actually cared for him during this time, and had 2 children. This was the first ever successfully transplanted organ.
It's kind of sad he only lived for 8 years, though.
I know he died when he was 30.
Man, that's sad, though.
Yeah. I mean, you got 8 years and you got to have 2 kids and marry the love of your life, but still only 8 years.
Only 8 years.
Yeah. And they hadn't figured out how to give him another kidney transplant from somebody else yet.
Yeah.
So then in 1959, the first kidney transplant between individuals not genetically identical occurred in Louisiana at Charity Hospital. The donor and recipient were fraternal twin brothers, and at this time, immunosuppression had not been added to transplant care.
Yeah, which is huge.
Yeah. Before receiving the brother's kidney, the recipient underwent a sublethal, non-marrow requiring dose of total body X-ray.
I guess, were they hoping that the radiation from the X-ray would have, like, what was their goal there?
Yeah, I think they were hoping that the radiation would essentially decrease his immune system enough.
Interesting. Okay.
The patient survived and continued living an active lifestyle, dying 25 years later due to a cardiac issue.
That's much longer than the 8 years.
Yeah.
Yeah. This is cool. They're getting so far, and this is without any immunosuppression.
Yeah. I'm not sure what he needed the kidney transplant for.
Yeah.
Whereas the other guy had
nephritis.
Yeah.
Yeah. I guess that could really depend on things.
Yeah.
Also, how far advanced? Has it had effects on other parts of the body yet? There's so many other questions that can cause differences.
Yeah. Then the 1960s were dedicated to finding a way to allow for unrelated donors to have successful transplants by developing immunosuppression to prevent rejection. So they were like, we got to figure this out pronto.
Yeah, it's time.
In 1962, Dr. Roy Kaelin published findings that 6-mercaptopurine prolonged survival after renal transplant in 104 dogs.
Makes me sad that they're testing on dogs.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, okay. I know it's better than, like, just testing on humans, but also, like, puppies are just sweet little things.
Yeah, I know. Murray took this experiment and used it on human patients in the hospital, finding that irradiation offered little benefit alone, but the chemical suppressive agents azathioprine, actinomycin C, and prednisone often improved at least short-term outcomes.
It's interesting that they already have the idea of irradiation, because we talked about that in the blood transfusion episode, and that those with cancer, any sort of immunosuppression, have to have the irradiated blood. Yeah, so it's interesting that they're applying this to organ transplants.
Yeah, they're on the way.
Yeah, they're getting there.
Then in 1962, Murray led the first renal transplant between non-related patients with the use of azathioprine. This was also a huge landmark because it was the first successful transplant from a deceased donor.
Ooh, okay, so they're really getting into opening the door for donors.
Yeah, absolutely. Now they're still focusing on kidneys. We haven't really gotten to any other organ yet.
Kidney's still the most commonly donated organ, so.
Yeah, most needed too. Yeah. Just before Murray's success in 1959, Dr. Guy Alexander, a Belgian surgeon who had actually been one of Murray's research fellows at Harvard, introduced the idea of, I wish I had a French accent or could speak French for you all. Coma dépassé, a state beyond the deepest type of coma.
So brain death.
Coma dépassé was made possible through the artificial ventilation, which preserved oxygenation to organs in patients with no brain function who would have otherwise died due to respiratory arrest.
Yes. Yep. We're moving and grooving right now.
Yep. A year after Murray's transplant from a deceased donor, in 1963, a patient with a severe head injury was brought into the Hospital St. Pierre in Brussels. The patient was found to be in a state of coma dépassé, and Alexander requested to perform a renal transplant from this beating heart donor.
Ooh, that's a rough name.
Yeah, I know. I'm like, what did you have
beating heart donor?
Yeah.
Yeah. That's the only thing he's good for.
Yeah. It was approved by the department chair, and this was the first donation after what we now know as brain death.
Wow. That's so cool. It's also interesting that there's not more of a fight against ethics for this.
It comes.
Okay.
Especially when we get to the other organs.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. After the success of kidney transplants from deceased donors, all other organs were on the table for possible transplants as well. And by the late 1960s, transplants of the liver, heart, and pancreas were all performed successfully. Speaking of the heart, Dr. Christian Barnard, a South African cardiothoracic surgeon, and his brother, a fellow cardiac surgeon, attempted the first ever heart transplant.
Heart transplant is just so wild.
Yeah.
Because it's so much more. Of course, you need the heart to beat to get blood to perfuse to all of the other organs. So
Yeah.
I just think the heart transplant is the most wild transplant.
Besides lung, I feel like lung is pretty crazy.
You think lung is crazier than heart?
I don't think it's crazier. I just think that it's also like different kind of crazy.
Okay. We should just like watch videos one day and then decide
Okay.
with all of our spare time.
Yeah. Okay. South African law was vague in that it only stated that a patient was dead after a physician had declared death. So you could see where that might be a little
Yeah. Like he still has
problematic.
he still has a pulse, so he's not dead, but I'm asking for a dead donor organs.
Yeah. Barnard declared 25-year-old Denise Darkall dead with brain death criteria after an automobile incident caused an irreversible head injury. Barnard detached the ventilator and waited until the electrocardiogram indicated the absence of cardiac output, approximately 6 minutes.
So he stopped the heart from beating
Yeah.
before they procured the organ.
Mm-hmm.
How does this go?
The recipient, Louis Washensky, who was bedridden with diabetes, ischemic heart disease, and heart failure, died 18 days after the operation.
Okay, hear me out though. Probably was not the best candidate
To receive a heart?
to receive a heart.
Yeah.
And we're going to get into the ethics of that a little bit into modern medicine. Like,
Yeah.
does the organ go to the sickest patient or the patient
Most likely to survive the...
yes, long term from the operation? And that's a
Yeah.
hard answer.
Yeah.
But like, he's bedridden, he has diabetes, whatever the ischemic heart disease and heart failure, because the heart transplant could fix that. But he's just not somebody that's going to get up and moving, it sounds like, to like
Yeah.
get the blood flowing.
Yes. Yeah. So he didn't last very long after the operation, but Barnard's later patients yielded better results, with the fifth and sixth patients living for 12 and 24 years after the transplant.
So just patients 1 through 4 had bad outcomes and he kept
Yeah.
going. Yeah. We'll just ignore that fact.
Yeah.
Yeah.
1 month after Barnard's first human transplant, Dr. Norman Shumway performed the first human heart transplant in the U.S. And this is where we get into people being like, are we sure?
Yes.
During his surgery, his chief resident asked, "Do you think this is really legal?" And Shumway responded,
Shut the fuck up.
"I guess we'll see."
Now's not the time to ask, okay?
Yeah.
You should have asked before we got in the OR.
Yeah, we're in the middle of it now.
Yeah.
So I guess we'll find out.
Yes.
Then in 1968, the Southeast Organ Procurement Foundation was formed, and as a result, the group implemented the first ever computer-based organ matching system in 1977 called the United Network of Organ Sharing, or UNOS.
Still a thing today.
Created an organ matching system that had the potential to increase the number of lives saved because you can match people faster and across the country.
Yeah.
They also established the Kidney Center in 1982 to provide round-the-clock support for placing donated organs, which later became known as the UNOS Organ Center.
That's so cool that that's how it came about.
Yeah. Then in 1984, the National Organ Transplant Act established the framework for a national organ recovery and allocation system in the private sector.
Oof, I hate anything that comes into the private sector.
This was a way to distribute organs based on organ matching through medical criteria. So,
I get the medical criteria. It's just anytime anything in medicine has to go through the private sector, it's never turns out best for the patients.
yeah. And then in 1986, UNOS received a federal contract to operate the Organ Procurement and Transplant Network and Scientific Registry of Transplant Recipients. So what we have now.
Yeah.
That site you were talking about now.
Like 1984 is just not long ago that we just got like all of this put together. Like I said, the list just continues to grow every day, and the need for this site and for medical matching and all of those things just continues to grow.
Yeah. So become an organ donor.
Become an organ. Are you an organ donor?
Yeah.
Me as well.
Yeah, I got that heart on my license.
Yeah.
They know what it is.
I guess while we're making that comment, I'll go ahead and say it is a huge misconception that if you are an organ donor, that we will not try as hard to save you. From the emergency room, typically organ donations do not happen. If we declare someone dead in the emergency room, we do not have the resources from there to get them ready for organ donation. So it's just like not even a thought in our minds whatsoever. And maybe it should be, but the issue is just that it's not like we're hooking them up to all the monitors. We're declaring brain death up there. Like we declare cardiac death down in the emergency room. We have never once looked at someone's license. Yeah. And said, oh, they're an organ donor. Like that information does not matter to us. Our job is to get you back or not. When we call a time of death, we call a time of death with nothing keeping your heart beating, your organs perfusing, anything like that. Like, it is a true time of death down in the ER. So I just wanted to start out, like, that's a big misconception, is that we won't do as much for you. And it's just totally wrong.
Yeah, most people don't want one person to die for another person to live.
Yeah.
You know, we don't
Yeah.
go around wishing that upon
No.
people. Now, there are other people that we'll talk about in the case file that do love to turn a profit.
Yeah, never a good time. All right, so let's get into the anatomy deep dive for this. So this does get a little deep, but I think it's going to set the tone great for this week's episode and next week's episode. And so we won't have to dive as deep next week. And so just stick with me and realize that all of this is actually incredibly important when it comes to the immunology of an organ transplant. So why does immunology for an organ transplant even matter? Like, why doesn't your body just accept the organ, say, thank God we have kidneys that aren't failing anymore, let's move on?
This is foreign.
Yes, because the immune system is designed to detect anything that isn't you or that is foreign and destroy it. So unfortunately, that organ is detected as not you, and it will literally destroy the organ.
Yeah, but you want your body to do that. Like,
Yes.
not on a transplant.
Not on a transplant, but like that's how
every
we fight
day.
off infections and
Every day
everything
you
else.
want your body to do that.
Yes, yes. So first, the body's ID system, how it identifies self versus non-self. Every cell in our body has surface markers, and the most important one is HLA, or human leukocyte antigens. HLAs are genes in the major histocompatibility complexes, or MHC, and they help code proteins that differentiate between self and non-self. These cells play a significant role in disease and immune defense. Also, for those that are interested, they found that HLA has been extremely important in autoimmune diseases, which I think is interesting as more research is going to come out about that, because in autoimmune diseases, the body is attacking itself.
Yeah.
Yes. And so I just think this isn't brand new in HLA, but it's still relatively new in the medical field. And maybe at some point we'll get into an autoimmune disorder and get to talk about this a little bit more, but I think it's really interesting. So an analogy for those that aren't in the medical field, the immune system is essentially constantly checking IDs of these cells. And if something doesn't match, if like the name on the ID doesn't match, it's treated as an invader and is essentially kicked out of the club or gets
It's your
destroyed.
bouncer.
Yeah, it's your bouncer.
It's your bouncer. Checking
Yes.
IDs at the front, giving you a stamp to move on, or turning your ass around because your ID is fake.
Yes. Only happened to me once, okay? There did happen to be a cop sitting right beside me. It was I shouldn't have done it, but that's okay.
Should have just said, not tonight.
Not tonight. You know what? I'm feeling tired. I'm going to call it a night.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the immune system has two main arms. It has the innate immunity and the adaptive immunity. The innate immunity is fast and non-specific, doesn't have memory, anything like that. It is the first line of defense. It's non-specific because it responds the same way to all germs and all foreign bodies. The few lines of this is protection through the skin and mucous membranes. So this is a physical barrier that stops different germs or, foreign bodies, injuries, pathogens, whatever else from entering. Substances that live either on the skin or in the mucous membranes, like acid, enzymes, and mucus, prevent bacterial and viruses from growing. Obviously, this doesn't work 100% of the time because sometimes we have to use our adaptive immunity. There is also protection via the immune system cells and proteins. So whenever there is an injury or a site of infection or something like that, the innate immune system calls for inflammation to come to this area. And so this allows the blood vessels to get wider and wider and allow for more immune cells to arrive and fight the infection. And that's when we see that physical inflammation on physical exam. Phagocytes are your scavenger cells, and they enclose germs and digest them. I actually think this is so fun. It's just like,
it's a Pac-Man.
It is a Pac-Man. It is a Pac-Man. And then proteins or enzymes activate a chain reaction to allow the immune response to grow stronger and quicker. So it's like, I think it's an 8-chain reaction that I did not get into. There's also natural killer cells, which identify cells that have been infected by a virus, or abnormal cells that may or may be turning into tumor cells. And they destroy those cells using cytotoxins.
Nice. You got your Pac-Man. You got your Hitman.
Yeah.
You got your
physical
garbage
barrier.
man.
Yeah. Yeah. I actually it's so cool. Your body having all of these different things to fight off infection. So essentially the function of the innate immune system is just to recognize danger signals. Doesn't care what those danger signals are. just that something is wrong, and then they start the first line of defense. But when they fail, that brings in our adaptive immunity, which is slow, specific memory. So this is against specific pathogens or changed body cells. It's slower to respond than innate, but more accurate when it does respond. And this is the immune system that builds up immunity against measles, whether you got the vaccine or you were exposed to measles, so that you don't get it again to its fullest effect. Yes. This is the memory. The adaptive immunity is the big player in transplant rejection. So quickly, T cells attack directly and B cells make antibodies, but we're going to break these down a little bit. So T cells are made in the bone marrow, but mature in the thymus, which is where they get T from because they mature in the thymus. Big T. Big T. Their function is to use chemical messengers to activate other cells of the immune system, aka T helper cells. They also detect tumor cells or cells that have been infected by viruses and destroy them, which are the cytotoxic T cells. Some T helper cells become memory T cells so that they are ready to activate the adaptive immune system quickly if the body becomes infected by the same germ again. So this is that you typically, once you have immunity to something, won't have it again. There are two major types of T cells, which this is going to take us back a little bit to our HIV and AIDS. So there are CD8 T cells, which are killer cells. They directly destroy cells. They punch holes and cause apoptosis, which is literally cell death. The CD4 T cells are helper cells. They coordinate immune response, activate B cells, macrophages, and other T cells. So T cells are one of the major players of the game in organ transplant and immunosuppression. But quick note on B cells and antibodies. B cells are made and mature in the bone marrow. So that's where the B comes from, is that they mature in the bone marrow.
And that makes sense. This is probably one of the few things in medicine that you've explained where I'm like, yes. I also am having a flashback to high school biology and some type of video with a T cell with muscles on it. So don't know if everybody else had that experience, but it's just taking me back. I'm having a moment over here.
All I could think about when writing this episode was the Magic School Bus. So is that two different childhoods?
No, I had the Magic School Bus too.
Okay.
I'm surprised you had the Magic School Bus, really.
Me too.
Yeah.
I think I got the very end of it.
Yeah, it was pre your generation, really.
So B cells are activated by T cells, as we just said. B cells make copies of themselves, and these copies turn into plasma cells. And these plasma cells make very large amounts of antibodies. And then these antibodies are released into the blood. The helper cells only activate B cells that match the attacking germs. So the body only makes the exact antibodies that are needed, which you just think about metabolism and how much our body has to get through every day and all of the things that we need to do in terms of preserving energy. And our immune system has figured out how to tell B cells to make the exact antibodies that are needed to fight off this infection.
Yeah.
Freaking
so
cool.
Smart.
Yeah. Freaking cool.
It's so smart and it's not even connected to your brain.
No.
It's just a response in your body.
Just a response.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then antibodies, as I just said, are made by B cells. They recognize germs and other harmful substances attached to them. And then these quote unquote intruders become harmless once the antibodies are attached.
I'm just like, there's so many different assassin cells happening.
There is. So then there's this phenomenon called antigen presentation, which I always think as somebody coming up and being like, my Lord, would you like to take a look? It's always how I've thought about it.
That's so funny.
So antigen presenting cells literally break down the foreign material and then display it on these HLA molecules we were talking about earlier and present it to T cells. Like, my Lord,
take a look.
My T cell, take a look.
Is this good enough for you?
It allows T cells to determine if they need to trigger the adaptive immune response or maintain self-tolerance. So it's all about presentation. In transplants, the donor organs bring their own immune cells. And so these cells activate the recipient T cells, which then causes that whole cascade that we were just talking about in immunology. So connecting the dot to that antigen presentation, if after we present to our T cell lord and they determine that it is foreign, it is not self, all the things, B cells will produce antibodies against the foreign antigens. And in transplants, they can form antibodies against the donor HLA. The consequence of this is the antibodies bind to the organ, activate the whole complement system, and this causes inflammation, clotting, and tissue destruction of the new organ. No bueno.
Not good.
Yeah. Immunologic memory. Once exposed, the immune system remembers. Prior exposures can increase this risk. So pregnancy, think about your RH status compatibility,
Mhm.
blood transfusions, that's your ABO compatibility, and previous transplants. Since the immune system doesn't forget, if you have one failed transplant, it makes future transplants harder. Yeah.
That is unfortunate.
Then there is a small role of blood vessels here, which I'm not going to get into really deeply, but transplanted organs are highly, highly, highly vascular. And so the endothelium of blood vessels are lined with the donor HLA markers. So the first point of contact with the recipient immune system is almost immediate when we put this organ in. So it happens
So
very quickly.
rejection can happen.
Rejection can happen in minutes, actually.
Yeah.
Yes, which we're going to get into. At its core, transplant rejection happens because your immune system sees the new organ's ID, realizes it's not yours, and launches a coordinated attack using T cells and antibodies. And that's the deep dive. So we got a little
Crazy.
bit, we got a little bit into how it directly affects the organ transplantation in there. And then we're going to come back to that and make it make even more sense. But that's really how our body, outside of organ transplants, too, figures out like, oh, this is a common cold. We need to attack this. This is strep throat. We need to attack, all of this different things. It works the exact same way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's why you got to give your immune system power
Yes.
by sleeping,
By
which
sleeping.
we don't do.
Yeah, one day we'll sleep again.
So
I actually sleep a lot. I just sleep in naps right now.
just not in a consecutive time.
No. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So current medicine today, the need today, due to an increase in chronic diseases, plus our population is aging, there is an absolute increase in transplant indications. So as I stated earlier, over 100,000 people in only the United States are waiting for an organ. And 13 to 17 people die every single day waiting for an organ. There is another person that's added to the donor list every 8 minutes.
Yeah. You think the increase in chronic diseases is just the fact that we are better at diagnosing?
No. And the reason I say no is because I think it has to relate to our diet, to our access to non-natural things, to our lack of exercise, to diagnosing, and to aging. And part of the reason I stand so sure about that is because in a role rotation I had when I was a student, there were many, many people in the nursing home that were like 105, 110, whatever age, greater than 95, and still like getting up and walking around. And all of them had just eaten like their own grass-fed beef because they all have farms out there and their own like homegrown vegetables, and they live very simple lifestyles out there even now, and they just had a completely different health profile than what we have in these metro cities.
Yeah, I can tell you stress is definitely taking
A toll on me.
years off my life, probably.
Yes. But we do this so it becomes less stressful in our lives. One day the podcast is going to take off and we're not going to be as stressed.
Podcast is the least of my stress half the time.
It's a lot of my stress when we're recording at 9:30 at night. Okay. So as I stated earlier, the supply does not equal the demand, and there's going to be a shortage of organs for the foreseeable future, for as long as we can plan out for now. Major indications for organ donations: kidney is end-stage renal disease, so think about your dialysis patients. And this is most commonly due to diabetes and high blood pressure. I educate patients all the time about how high blood pressure is the silent killer, because nobody really feels when their blood pressure is that high unless they start getting like chest pain, shortness of breath, headache, things like that, but kind of these vague symptoms. But I've had many patients that have a blood pressure of 220 over whatever, and they don't feel it. And they don't understand until someone really sits them down and talks to them about how blood pressure really is the silent killer. So that's my little tidbit about that. You guys should really pay attention to your blood pressure. Liver is due to cirrhosis, so that can be because of alcohol, hep C, or non-alcoholic liver disease. Heart is because of advanced heart failure, and then lung is most commonly because of COPD or fibrosis. Organs that can be donated. Let's talk about it.
It's a lot more than you would think, I feel like.
It is a lot more than you would think. So a living donor can donate one kidney, which is one of the most common living donor donations, a piece of your liver, not the whole thing, but a piece.
Just a little bit.
Yep. Bone marrow or stem cells, part of your lung, or part of your pancreas.
Which part of my lung does it matter?
I don't know.
You just take like a triangle?
Well, your lung has like fissures and is broken up into lobes, right?
Yeah.
So I assume they base it off of those fissures.
Take a lobe.
Yeah. Anyways, part of the pancreas is rare though. From a deceased donor, you can have liver, kidney, pancreas, heart, lungs, and intestines. I don't want an intestine donation.
I don't love it.
No,
But I guess I don't really love the idea of getting any transplant,
no, absolutely not.
even though I have a little piece.
Yeah, let's be clear. So Bernie has a bone donor.
I have like a bone graft, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah. She has a piece of another person's bone in her femur.
Yes.
And then body tissues, which a lot of people forget about. Cornea, which is most common. I have been a part of a lot of cornea transplants. I think they're so fun to be a part of and to know you're truly giving someone their vision back. Heart valves, bone, skin, tendons and ligaments, cartilage, blood vessels, and nerves.
Nerves, that's interesting.
Yeah.
How do you
Obviously,
connect a nerve?
I don't know. The cartilage, blood vessels, and nerves is a lot less common than the other ones, though. Yeah. So one donor can save 8 lives and improve dozens more, which is such a cool statistic to me.
Yeah, but it also is like, how come then the numbers aren't better?
Because we have an
Not
opt.
every person
Yes.
has the capability of saving 8 lives, just if you were in perfect health.
Yes. And we have an opt-in system in the United States instead of an opt-out.
Yeah.
And it has to be HLA matching and blood type matching and all of these things.
Yeah.
Yeah. Also, the majority of people on the donor list are waiting for kidneys. So obviously,
There's only so many kidneys.
to go around.
Yeah.
Yeah. I want us to go through kind of steps that people go through in terms of organ donation and receiving a donor. So, steps for a deceased donor. I thought this was really interesting. Federal law mandates that it is a different medical team that recovers the organs or tissues from the one that cared for the donor at the end of their life.
That's interesting.
And I think it's just trying to like not blur the line between ethics.
Yeah.
Yes.
And then if you're the team caring for them, this goes to your argument. Like they're not doing everything to save someone because they're an organ donor. It's
Yeah.
like, no, this team is doing everything to
Yeah.
save you. And then another whole nother team that's not even associated with the one that cared for you to try to save your life is coming in and doing the work.
Yes.
So I think it makes it easier to have the clear cut lines.
Yes, I agree. I agree. So if they are brain dead, the pathway is there's a severe neurologic injury, which takes them to the ICU. They are declared to be brain dead. The organ procurement organization becomes involved, and this is still whether on ventilator, vasopressors, whatever they need. Consent is obtained via the registry and or the family, which we're going to come back to. This gets a little iffy. And then, like I said, the donor is maintained on that support while there is organ matching and allocation. And then they go to the operating room for procurement. So it's a process.
Yeah. It takes a long time.
And I always think like the closure for this family, their loved one that has been declared brain dead, is prolonged. Like they know that they're still quote unquote alive upstairs, even if they're brain dead, they're still breathing because a machine is breathing for them. And they haven't gotten to say like their official goodbye. This is it yet. And that makes me sad. Even though I know how beautiful organ donation is, it makes me sad for the family.
Yeah, it's hard.
For a deceased donor, it is time sensitive and emergent coordination. Even though that doesn't sound emergent, it is time sensitive. A heart needs to be donated within about 4 to 6 hours, a liver 8 to 12 hours, and kidney up to 24 to 36 hours. And so even 4 to 6 hours, like to go through all of these processes, go to the operating room for procurement and get it in another recipient in 4 to 6 hours.
Yeah, that's super fast.
Super fast.
I mean, because also geographically, you can only go so far.
Yes.
Right. So if you're on the East Coast, it's not like you can take that heart all the way to the West Coast and have it in time. So that even goes, even though you may be at the top of a list, you have to be in the vicinity of
in the right place at the right time.
Yeah.
Yeah. For a living donor, you have to find and screen donors to find a match, get consent, match the donors to the recipients, coordinate the surgery, remove and preserve the organs, do the organ transplant surgery. But as a living donor, it's very controlled, very planned. There's nothing emergent about this. Obviously, it's urgent because they're in some sort of organ failure and they need the transplant, but it's not emergent.
Yeah.
Yes. So risk and benefits of organ donation and transplantation. Just a reminder, organ donor at death does not affect your care whatsoever. For recipients, the benefits are obviously life-saving. You have an organ that is failing, and we're going to be able to give you a new organ, and you have improved quality of life. But for risk, there are surgical complications, lifelong immunosuppression, which can lead to severe infections around the time of surgery and your body being susceptible to these infections, and obviously rejection. For living donors, the benefits are psychological fulfillment, which I get, but also like terrifying, but I get it. Yes.
Yeah.
If it was someone I loved, like I think I would do it without a question.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And then there's typically minimal long-term impact. Risks include surgical complications, reduced organ reserve. So obviously if you only have one kidney now, and then rare long-term complications. How to become an organ donor. So in the United States, and I don't know about other countries, but we are an opt-in country, not an opt-out country, which I kind of disagree with, but I'm also a medical professional, so I have bias going into that. But you can go to the National Donate Life Registry, the state registry site, local DMV, which is how both Bernadette and I did it, and the health app on your phone can send it to the National Registry. So if you're just on your phone, you can put in that you want to be an organ donor and put in all of your information, and they'll send it to the registry for you.
Cool.
Yeah. Now, one thing to keep in mind before we jump back into a quick immunology section, even though you're an organ donor per DMV, per your health app, per all of these things, family can overturn your decision to be an organ donor after your death.
You better not.
It makes me sad. Like, no, they
made that decision in sound mind.
Precisely. So we're going to talk about that a little bit in the ethics of autopsy, but I'll let you guys sit on it for a minute because it makes me sad. But it's the same as every other piece of medicine, you know?
Yeah, DNR.
Precisely. You can have a patient that in sound mind signed a DNR and DNI, and then when they get sick and their medical power of attorney takes over, they will overturn that if they want to. And we can, discuss and say they made this in sound mind, but they get the final decision.
That's messed up.
Yeah.
It's like here in the United States, we're so into giving people choices over their body until we're not.
Yeah. I was about to say that's a limited statement.
I mean, you can choose if you want to be an organ donor, and you can choose if you want to be cremated or this or that, and you can choose not to be vaccinated, and you can choose this, and you can choose not to have a birth in a hospital. And you can, you can choose all these things unless they don't like that choice.
Yes.
And then they're like, well, just kidding. We want to change that, or we want to allow people's choices to be taken away because we don't like the fact that people can make choices about that thing.
Yes. All right. Jumping back into the immunology of transplantation. So, of course, this is the major biological barrier to successful transplantation. Rejection happens because when there's no match, the recipient immune system will recognize the donor organ as non-self. And reminder, those major players are the HLA, so human leukocyte antigens, which are those identity markers, and T cells, which are the primary mediators. There are three main types of rejection. So hyperacute, minutes to hours. Imagine finally getting your organ transplant and within minutes it rejects.
That's so depressing.
So this is a lot less common now, but this is due to preformed antibodies such as ABO, which is your blood types, or an HLA mismatch. This causes complement activation, which causes thrombosis and immediate graft failure, results in immediate removal of the organ. This is rare nowadays because we have cross-matching, but this did used to be a big deal. The next type is acute, so days to months. This is T cell mediated, plus or minus antibody mediated, and this mainly causes inflammation, and it is reversible if we catch it early enough. And lastly, there's chronic, which happens over months to years. It is slow immune-mediated change, and it causes fibrosis, so scarring, and vascular narrowing, which is the main cause of long-term graft loss, so organ loss. Matching and compatibility. The ABO compatibility is the same principles as the blood transfusion. And so if you need a reminder, I did what I thought was a good anatomy deep dive into blood transfusion and matching in that episode, if you need to go back and take a listen to that. There's HLA matching, which is especially important in kidney transplant, but also in all transplants. So it tests blood or tissue to find compatible donors for transplants. They are matching it at the allele level for HLA A, B, and C, and DRB1. I'm not going into specifics of all of those, but they look for an 8 out of 8 match. And in some cases, they look for what's called a 10 out of 10 match. So they get this other allele involved. A 10 out of 10 match drastically decreases the chance of a rejection. Sibling donors have a 25% chance of being the perfect HLA match.
And then you get into all the movies that are all about saving your siblings and sacrificing. What is it? My Sister's Keeper.
Yeah.
And then you're forcing a child to save their sibling. because
Yes.
that's
Yeah.
rough.
It reminds me of Prince Harry in his book, The Spare.
Mm-hmm.
And his book was not immediately about this, but it was talking about how there's the heir and the spare. You kind of get like sad about it, you
Yeah.
know? Yeah. Cross match testing is when you mix recipient serum plus donor cells. And if there's a reaction, this is bad. That means that there's already preformed antibodies and there's a high risk of that immediate, so minutes to hours rejection. If there's a negative result, there's an increased chance of compatibility for the transplant. Now, immunosuppression. So, immunosuppression is the name of the game in organ transplantation. There is suppression right before or around the organ transplant, and then lifelong immunosuppression. And this is so the person's body never attacks the organ that is donated to them,
It
right?
just sucks that you have to be essentially immunocompromised for the rest of your life.
Yes. It's not essentially like you are immunocompromised for the rest of your life.
Yeah.
So there is induction therapy, which is high potency upfront suppression. And this happens right around the time of the transplant. There's one article I read that said in the OR during the transplant and then for a couple of days after the transplant. Then there is maintenance therapy, which is long term. And this is a classic 3-drug regimen. The first is calcineurin inhibitor, which is typically tacrolimus, the most common one. Then there is anti-metabolites, and the most common of these is mycophenolate mofetil. I might be pronouncing that last word wrong. And then steroids. And the mechanism of this immunosuppression is to block T cell activation, block proliferation, and reduce inflammation. And as I said, people are on this lifelong immunosuppression in order to prevent rejection. There is this trade off when it comes to immunosuppression, and it's, immunity versus survival. And so when you suppress the immune system, there's a decreased chance of organ rejection, but there's also an increased chance of infection. And when that infection comes, you have nothing to fight it off.
Yeah.
Yeah, I shouldn't say nothing. You have very little to fight it off.
Yeah.
There is also an increased malignancy, so cancer risk with long-term immunosuppression.
Makes sense.
Yeah. And so, you survive now because you got the organ transplant, but then will you die from a massive infection? Will you die from cancer? Will something else happen? So sad stuff. So it's a constant balancing act in the immunosuppression world. But for now, it's all we have. But that brings us to future directions. So currently one of the biggest goals in organ transplantation is something called tolerance induction, which
This is what I was just going to say. It's so weird that this came up. I was just going to say, couldn't you rebuild your immune system in some way by slowly developing it again by coming off immunosuppressants and then seeing the reaction of your body?
Yeah. So the answer to coming off immunosuppressants, I don't think is answered yet, but we're trying to find ways for patients not to be on lifelong meds. And so the goal, like I said, is the recipient's immune system to accept the organ without long-term high-dose immunosuppression. So there's a few ways that they're thinking about doing this, and it's kind of all about infusing cells, stem cells, bone marrow, whatever, typically of the donor into the recipient. Yes. So
then it's a lifelong thing for the donor.
No,
I mean,
is my understanding. Now, I did not dive super into this because it's all in the future, but via bone marrow transplantation at the same time as the organ transplant, cell-based therapy, so infusing regulatory T cells or mesenchymal stem cells to kind of just teach the body this is the new. And so trying to retrain the body of what's yours versus what is theirs. There's also the idea of T cell depletion, which is using monoclonal antibodies or radiation to deplete alloreactive T cells so that they don't form this whole complement system against the donor organ. Yeah.
So not only are we going to take your kidney, but we also need some bone marrow and
Yeah.
I could see where a living donor would be hesitant to
I agree.
do that.
I agree. Yeah, it's super hard. And I might have some of the details of this wrong because this was just a quick note on future directions, but it would be interesting if we could get people off lifelong medications because we've talked about this before, but then they have to be 100% compliant to their medications and connected to our healthcare system and all of those things. There is also the idea of xenotransplantation, which is animal to human transplantation, which we're going to talk about next week. And then there's bioengineered organs. So lab grown or 3D bioprinted or recellularized tissues.
3D bioprinted one is the craziest thing to me.
Yeah.
I mean, I just can't. I guess I just can't fathom it because when I'm at work, we do lots of 3D printing, but never in with biomaterials, I guess. So
Yeah.
it's hard for me to imagine the 3D printer that can use essentially cells and print a liver.
Yeah. It's insane.
That's crazy.
Same. Right now, we're about 20 to 30 years away from this clinical use, and research is currently super highly focused on vascularization. So, how do we recreate that?
Yeah. I mean, printing the shape of a liver is not the problem.
No. How do you, connect the arteries and the veins and the whole vascular system?
Yeah.
There's also this big question that's coming out more recently. I read a paper from March of 2026, so like very recently, about the question of the lymphatic system in organ transplantation because and I did not look deep into this. So if anybody has and I'm wrong, please email us in and I'll make a correction in a future episode. But the paper was saying that the lymphatic system is not reconnected when there's an organ transplant. And so they believe that this could also have effects in organ rejection because of the lymphatic system needing to be used for drainage and stuff like that. And I think that's probably true, right? I mean, obviously people are surviving without it right now, but I wonder if we'll find that it'll be even more successful with the lymphatic system connected. Once
Yeah.
again, I did not go really deep into that dive. I read one paper on it, but yeah.
It's interesting.
Yeah.
And we still got a lot to learn for sure.
So much. So
Yeah.
much.
So now we get to the ethics autopsy, which
My
is a
favorite
big
part.
one.
My favorite part of every episode.
Yeah. So I guess we'll start out with the idea and the concept of death.
Yeah.
Because when we're talking about organ transplants, it really matters. It really matters based on timing, viability, all of that when someone is truly dead. So
Yes.
brain death versus cardiac death, which you touched on within the ED, and don't know. I mean, I
Yeah.
think there's like your body is dead, and then I think the brain death is the harder one to comprehend.
Yeah. And I think, there's the medical side to it and there's the emotional side to it.
Yeah, absolutely.
So medically, we can check waveforms and see that there's no activity, and we can do scans and see that there's no activity. We can medically diagnose this. But, as a parent, and I pray we never experience this, as a parent, if anyone ever said to me that my daughter is brain dead, would I be able to take the emotional side out of that, even as a medical professional, and be like, okay, show me the scans. She is. I accept this.
No.
No.
I
Right.
tell you right now, it's going to be a no.
Right. And so, like, medically, I can tell you what brain dead means.
Yeah.
But that is an emotional answer to tell a family member, especially when they can walk in and see that their heart rate is still 60 and we still have their blood pressure, relatively good because we have them on vasopressors and they're on a ventilator. So they're breathing. So that, like, the body is physically living, but there's no brain function and they can't see that there's no brain function. And I think when it's not tangible for them, I think it's much more difficult.
Yeah, it is really hard because it looks like they're just sleeping.
Yeah.
Like in a coma.
Yeah.
And there's that small hope that they'll wake up, even if everybody's turned against you, is telling you one thing. There's that small piece where you're just hoping.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's hard to take that away.
Yeah. And I think a lot of the public mistrust about organ donation comes from this disconnect, cardiac death versus brain death.
Yeah.
Yeah. Next is consent. So who really decides? So, there's first person consent, which is where someone registered through the registry, through the DMV, whatever else, versus next of kin override. And next of kin, especially if they're a medical power of attorney, get to override things all the time. And it's one of my least favorite parts of medicine.
I just don't think that should be possible.
If something is made in sound mind, it was written down in a legal document, I agree.
Yeah, it's just so annoying to me that can be even a thing.
Yeah. Like, I would be so sad if I had made the decision, which I have, that I want to be an organ donor and that for a piece of me, I mean, like, that means that like my life gets to live on. It gets to help people. I get to continue helping people medically, which I've wanted to do my whole life, all of those things. And then you were like, no, I don't want to do it. I want her to be preserved.
Yeah.
Yeah. This is a whole different topic, but I'm going to step on it for a minute. This is a very personal opinion. Okay. Nobody has to agree with me. Do you know what's coming?
Mm-hmm.
I think graveyards shouldn't be a thing anymore. I just don't think people should be allowed to be buried. And I know that's such a harsh take. And like, I will still go to funerals and all of the things, but we are literally going to run out of room for cemeteries because people are dying every single day. And what are we going to do when we run out of all this space?
I mean,
some unethical shit.
I mean, that already happens. Like, people dig up graveyards to build freeways all the time. So, and then people's family members get displaced.
Yes. Which is so sad, right? I mean, I know that this is coming from someone. I'm like, donate all my organs and then send me to a cadaver lab somewhere where they can like practice different procedures and stuff like that. Do everything science with my body that you can and then throw it away. We don't need it.
I'm not in there anymore.
Yeah. And so, anyways, I guess the question coming back to this is like, what if the family refuses, but the patient's already opted in? And mind you, like we're on a timeline, right? The patient is brain dead. We need to get this heart in somebody in the next 4 to 6 hours. Somebody is dying, waiting for this transplant, all of the things. And so you can say like, oh, that's a big ethics discussion. Like bring in the ethics board. You don't have time to bring in the ethics board.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I think if something has been documented in sound mind, that should be the final say.
I agree.
Yeah.
It was their decision. Stop
Yes.
taking away people's choices.
Yes.
And then this is a big one. Who gets the organ?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which is a sad discussion.
Right. Because there's no real right answer, I don't think. You can try your best to make the decision that everybody feels good with and is the right decision, but someone is always going to be on the losing end of that decision.
And I just want to make it clear, before people can get on the transplant list, they have to stop smoking, they have to stop drinking, they have to stop doing drugs. So those social pieces are already removed from this situation before they can even get on the list. But then like criteria of medical urgency, likelihood of success, the time that they've been on the wait list. I think a job I would never, ever, ever want to have is this job.
Do not sign me up for that.
No. I'm too emotional of a person for this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, but it's hard because you want to have somebody that is emotional and an empath a little bit because they have to care. But you also need to have a person that can say, these are the facts and this is why this decision was made.
Yes.
And probably deal with a lot of tears and a lot of families that are very upset.
Yes.
Constantly.
And I imagine there's this whole level of upset before they ever even get to the organ donation list. If they have cancer, they're likely not going to get on that organ donation list because we have such a shortage of organs. We want it to go to someone that's going to be most likely to survive with this organ in place. And so think about all the tears that happen for the people that just never even end up on this list.
Yeah. It's so sad.
Yeah. So like, should younger patients get priority?
Well, I think there's also even a greater shortage of pediatric organs.
Yes.
That's also a whole different discussion of, we usually think of adult to adult, but there's a ton of, especially like infant organ.
No, we got to pass this conversation.
But I'm just saying that there's not a lot out there. So if your kid needs a heart transplant at 6 weeks old, where are you going to find a 6-week-old? You can't. You can't, right? So anyways, that's an awful discussion.
Yeah. My prompt for this was, if 2 patients need a liver, one needs a liver from alcohol use but has already stopped drinking, and one is not because of alcohol use, is because of Hep C or because of non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, should that matter why they need the organ donation in the first place?
I don't think it should.
I don't think it should, but obviously they've stopped drinking, all the things.
Yeah, but I could see where it would be difficult.
Yeah.
Like it would be a very emotional response if I knew that someone got a liver over me who was historically like an alcoholic.
Yeah.
I think I would be angry.
Yeah, I agree.
Because I'd be like, you already had one. You already got your chance.
Yeah. And you ruined it.
Yeah.
I get that. And then the last piece of the ethics autopsy today, which we'll touch on because I heard it's going to lead us into our case file this week, is organ trafficking in black markets, desperation and exploitation of these people that are in insane need of these organs, and understand that there's a global organ shortage, and understand that maybe they don't have insurance or they don't have money or, they don't have all of these things that they need to get on the donor list. Hit us with it.
This is a tough one because, like you said, the demand is way higher than the supply. And if you can maneuver around a very long, expensive process to go somewhere else, like it's tough because it's your life, it's not, or it's a loved one's life and you would do anything for that. I think the biggest problem lies in, one, the people that are running said operation.
Yes.
Or tend to be very unethical people. And then 2, the people that are donating, if you can call it donation, the organs are not always informed, not
always
always
informed.
paid,
Yeah.
and not always taken care of after.
And then also some are doing it because they need money to put food on the table or for their own kids' cancer treatment and stuff like that. You know, they're doing it also out of desperation sometimes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then you have these people that are playing on two sides of desperation, you know,
Yes.
and they're making money off of it.
Yeah.
I did read something that mentioned the only way we can control the black market is to legalize it in order to control it.
That would be hard.
That'd be
Because
crazy.
then you start getting into the question of should people be paid for organ donation? So then why would a living donor do it, you know, for the psychological fulfillment
Yep.
when they could get paid $20K for their kidney?
I mean, nobody's making $20K off their kidney. They're making like $1,000, but yeah.
Okay. But you could, I'm
But I
sorry, I
mean-
don't know the black market prices, okay?
Well, let me tell you, either promise you $1,000, give you $1,000, or promise you $1,000 and not give you anything.
Yeah. But yeah, that I think that would cause its own ethical dilemma with who would do it for free if they could get paid to do it.
Yep.
Yeah. Which then makes it even more expensive for people.
Yeah. I mean, we'll get more into it. It's a tricky one, but right now there's nothing really stopping people from using it besides the fact that it's illegal.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. And that brings us to cut it or keep it. Obviously, we're keeping organ transplants.
You got to keep it, but it is a tough subject.
It is. It is. Especially if you talk about the pediatric side of it, which makes me incredibly sad. But
yeah.
Yeah. It'll be interesting to see, 30 years from now when we have the bioengineered stuff, how it changes and how the demand for organ transplantation will change.
Yeah, like what's the cost of a 3D printed
I'm sure
organ?
Expensive.
Yeah, so is it cheaper to have, like, this is a whole nother ethics discussion, and you talk about the cost of a 3D printed.
Yeah.
Like, who can afford that?
I don't know.
Is insurance going to cover that? Probably not.
I imagine not at the beginning, but I guess they'll get on board.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Guess we'll have to wait and see.
Yeah. A few listener questions this week just to leave you guys thinking. It's just such a big topic, and I really couldn't choose between one to two. Do you think people should be financially compensated for organ donation?
I'm going to leave it up to you guys.
I think then my immediate answer is no, because I think then it becomes more difficult for people in worse social situations to get organ donations. But also, would it increase organ donations so that we didn't have such a long list and it became more available for people? Like, I don't know. That's a tough one.
I mean, we do it for blood. We do it for eggs. We do it for sperm.
Yeah.
We pay people all the time for lots of other bodily fluids. So it wouldn't be so far-fetched to pay somebody for a kidney. It's also as the expectation, right? Like you're donating blood, you make like, I don't even know how much it is, but, or you donate your eggs.
You make a ton.
You make a ton of money, you know?
Yeah.
Is it that far-fetched? We already kind of do it.
Yeah, that's fair.
Number 2. Who should get priority of an organ? The sickest patient or the one most likely to survive long term?
All emotions out. The one most likely to survive long term. But like, could the sickest patient survive long term if they had a healthy heart, kidney, or whatever it is?
Yeah. Who gets to decide?
I never want to decide.
Not me.
No. Should families be allowed to override someone's decision to be an organ donor?
No.
No.
Next question. Would you support an opt-out organ donation system instead of an opt-in?
Yes.
I would. Obviously, if you have certain religious beliefs, you would
opt out.
Opt out.
Yeah.
So like everybody's in, and then as long as the system is easy to use, just like it is now to opt in, you go to your DMV, get your license, and you're like, I'm opting out.
Yep.
Or you put in your request. You could probably even do it since it's an opt-out program. You're automatically opted in. It'd probably be, you know how we have to fill out like birth certificates and things like that? It'd probably be a question on the birth certificate that would be like, are you opting in or opting out? And then the parents, based on many decisions, could be religious beliefs, could be anything, could make that decision. And then when the person turns 18 and have their license, they can change that decision.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I also think it's just freaking stupid in America that we leave it up to the sweet lady at the DMV to educate me about if I should opt in to be an organ donor.
Not a medical professional.
Not a medical professional, not your PCP, not, the school nurse, like none of that. But the lady at the DMV
That's giving my eye test.
Yes. Hands you a pamphlet and is like, you can review this if you want. Do you want to be an organ donor or no?
Yeah, it is kind of crazy. Like, why the DMV?
Yes.
such a weird place to put it.
Yeah, I think transplant medicine is super interesting because it is the area where like death creates life for some of these people.
Yeah.
And there's very few pieces in medicine where we have that. I'm excited to learn about this wild case file we're about to do, as well as the animal to organ transplantation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That'd be interesting.
Yeah. And on that note, we're going to get out of here for today.
Yeah.
Check out our show notes for our link tree to find everything in one place, where to listen, how to support, and our Amazon storefront. You can listen anywhere that you get your podcasts. And as we always say, please support us any way you can. Financially, that's on buymeacoffee.com, which you can find in our link tree. And then additionally, freebies, leave a review, leave a comment, share our podcast, interact with us on social media, all of the fun things.
Yeah. And if you have an idea for an episode or a case, go ahead and DM us on social media. We like to do the topics that you're interested in. And if you have a story, maybe about transplants, go ahead and send us that way if you would like us to share it on the pod.
Yeah. All right. Class is dismissed.
Stay safe.
Stay curious.
And don't try this at home.
Unless you own a bone saw.
No, don't try organ transplants at home.
Don't. This podcast is for educational and entertainment purposes only. We discuss the history of medicine, not your personal medical situation. Nothing you hear on this show should ever be taken as medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Some of the information discussed may be incorrect or become outdated over time. We do our best to stay current with medical knowledge, but medicine changes quickly. Additionally, because we do not work in every specific field we discuss, there may be times when we misspeak or misinterpret information. We're all human and we're doing our best for the podcast. Every medical case is unique, and your health decisions should always be made in consultation with your own qualified healthcare professional. If you have any questions or concerns about your health, please reach out to a licensed provider who can give you guidance based on your individual needs.